Hello, ChangePoint family. Welcome to the Commons. And I'm joined today by David Steerwalt. Hi, David.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Glad to see you guys.
We're glad you're here. But before we get into the why is David sitting next to me this morning, I do want to highlight the fact that Scott just delivered a great message, a timely message as we celebrate Father's Day today. And it's based in Psalm 128. And the idea here is that, God wants to bless us. He wants to make himself known. He wants to show us his power, the ability to reconcile, the ability to bring hope, the ability to bring truth, all of these things that are part of the heartbeat and the fabric of God. But one of the keys there is that we've got to walk with him. We've got to trust God. We've got to put our faith in God consistently. We can't just on occasion reach out and expect great things to happen, right? This relationship with God is just that, and the importance of us walking alongside the Father and trusting him through life's ups and downs and lefts and rights. And so thank you, Scott, for delivering that word. And we're thankful to the Lord for providing encouragement through his word to us. And So today is Father's Day, so I want to say happy Father's Day to all of our ChangePoint dads, but also something that's really near and dear to my heart are the people that are mentors or father figures for people as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later today. But David, I'm really glad you're here.
I'm really excited to be here as well.
Excellent. And one of the things that I'm really impressed with you about, and obviously I don't know you incredibly well, but I know a lot about you from what I've heard from others. And reputation doesn't always speak volumes because it's not always the truth, right? What people perceive somebody to be like. But you are held in incredibly high regard by people that I trust very, very dearly. And so not only as a father, but also as somebody who invests in the next generation. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that today. But David, tell us a little bit about you and about your family.
Well, I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and moved up here for the second time in 2001. Met my beautiful wife, Amy, here at ChangePoint when it was over at the old campus. And got married here in the church, and we have two kids now. Eli, my oldest, is 16, and Tana, my youngest, is 13.
Right on. What brought you up to Alaska?
The desire to get as far away from Colorado as possible where they still spoke English. So Alaska fit that bill. I tried Fairbanks first. That was incredibly intense and cold and remote. And so the second time I came to Anchorage, where it's a little bit more urban, and you have restaurants and you can walk outside. Those are important things to me. So.
Right on. Where is all your family here in Alaska too? Extended family or just your immediate?
Just immediate. My wife has a lot of family up here, out in Port Allsworth and here in Anchorage, and so we do a lot with my wife's family. But my immediate family is still down in Colorado and Missouri.
Right on. Lee Jensen is hopefully going to be joining us a little bit later. We're working on some technical things right now. But if you know anything about Lee, they're pregnant, him and Kimberly, and their due date is July 20th. So he's gearing up, right? And I've only been a dad for 2 years, so I'm really thankful for the next few minutes as you get to download into us and others that are joining us in the Commons. And also welcome. If you are joining us, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Hopefully God uses this next few minutes to really encourage you, but also speak life to whatever you're looking to learn about being a dad. So Father's Day traditions, do you have any? You've been doing this a little longer than I have, so how about you?
Yeah, our Father's Day tradition is that we come to church on Sunday and then we go out for a big sushi lunch. We've been feeding our kids and teaching them to love sushi since they were very, very young. And so it's just one of my favorite things, and it's become one of my family's and my kids' favorite things. So we just go out for a nice big sushi boat on Father's Day.
And do work. All right. So here's a question for you, and maybe it's different for every child. But see, I have a 2-year-old, Graham, who the kid won't even eat mac and cheese, man. Like, he's a really picky eater. So do you have any advice for how to help him? And we try to introduce beef. He'll eat hot dogs on occasion and little chicken fingers and that kind of stuff. And then he gets tons of other protein with squeezies, and we don't need to talk about that. But how do you get a 2-year-old to like other foods, or is that just a kid by kid basis?
It's definitely kid by kid. Each one has different things that they dislike. I'm firmly convinced that kids actually can't taste food until about 4 or 5. It's
good to know.
It's actually about the texture of whatever they're given and your face on whatever they're given. And so if you convince them that something's good and delicious at 2, then it's mostly lying to our children, but it's okay because we're just telling them that this is going to be amazing. When you grow up and you can actually taste this, you're going to love it. And so it's getting them to do it. The other, truism in the Steerwalt household is that we make one meal. So
there you go.
We don't make 6 meals for different people and try to accommodate everyone's particular likes and dislikes. We make one meal, and you're going to eat that meal. And if you don't eat that meal, then you can figure out how to feed yourself. That's fine. And so it's a little
good
harsh,
stuff right here.
But my kids will eat anything at this point.
And they'll like sushi.
And they love sushi. And because my face when I eat sushi is like, oh, this is so good. And so, they pick up on that, and eventually they're like, oh yeah, this is good. This raw fish in my mouth with wasabi on it, man, this is fantastic stuff. And half of it is just convincing that before they're 5, when they can actually start tasting things. And then when my daughter was 5 or 6, she finally said, "Dad, this is kind of hot." I was like, "Yeah, that's the wasabi." Like until that point,
tears streaming down her face.
She had no idea that what she was eating was incredibly hot. She just, it was soft and squishy and yummy, and so.
Right on.
Yeah.
So another question for you: do you like dad jokes?
I don't have many dad jokes. I don't roll them out very often. Most of them are grammar jokes. I can't handle when people say me and Jonathan. It just drives me crazy. And so my constant response to that is simply Jonathan's not that mean. Should be Jonathan and I. It's just it's an important distinction for me, and my kids know it well. All the students in student ministry know it well because I just say it all the time. It's one of those automatic responses that I have.
Well, if you are just joining us in the Commons, me and David are hanging out together, and just glad that you're here.
I'm not that mean.
So my father-in-law, shout out to John Conrad. He's an amazing guy. Loves the cheesiest dad jokes on the planet. So I have another friend named Mike Short who always posts these on Facebook. So I just copy the screenshot and send them to my father-in-law, and he loses his mind. One of the ones, I got to say it, man. I don't even like dad jokes because I think they're so stinking cheesy, but they're
Do I have a
funny.
part in this, or is this just straight?
Oh, it's up to you.
All right, go,
So
go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Why did the dad fall in the well?
I just don't know.
He didn't see that well.
It's fantastic. That is wonderful.
Is it though?
Yes. It's purely awful.
One of my other favorite ones that I just saw is, so I've got this friend of mine that brags about how he can print a gun on his 3D printer.
Ooh, I want one of those.
But we don't really understand why he's so excited because I've had a Canon printer for 30 years.
Both jokes I've never heard before, and that's a high bar. So I applaud you on both.
Outrageous.
That's impressive.
All right, so let's get a little more serious and talk about real life stuff that actually matters. So let me ask you this: what does Father's Day mean to you?
Well, I've never been a huge fan of celebrating things once a year, birthdays and Christmas and Easter and Father's Day for that matter. I think it's kind of silly to celebrate them on a single day. And so I look at these things and I try to think what in them is worthy of it's either worthy of celebrating every day of the year or it's not worth celebrating at all. And Father's Day is one of those days that I absolutely feel like we should celebrate every day. And so I'm trying to do my level best and trying to instill into my kids level best to celebrate fathers and those father figures in their lives every day of their lives. And so it's fatherhood is a crucial part in every kid's development. And I know I benefited from my dad's input into my life. And I know students and kids that have benefited from my input into their lives. And so I've seen it kind of both ways. And that mentorship can't happen once a year, right? It can't happen for this day only and then end at the end of the day. It has to be done every day of the whole year. And whenever the Lord presents that opportunity to be a father or to be mentored by a father, you got to take that opportunity right away.
Yeah.
Just like we can't celebrate the birth of Christ once a year.
Sure.
We need to celebrate that every day.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And it reminds me of how thankful I am for my dad, Richard Terry, who has been such a present dad in my life. My stepdad, Jim Huff. I mean, I am fortunate to have two incredible dads. And again, my father-in-law, John. And I know not everybody has that opportunity. Hopefully, everyone has a mentor in their life, or if they need one, I hope they will even contact our church to say, hey, I need somebody to speak life to me. I need somebody to walk me through what this Christian faith is like also, so I can be a better example to somebody else. And so if that is you today, you're looking for mentoring or somebody that can just help disciple you or help make sense of your journey with Jesus, reach out to us. You know, we'd love to connect you with someone that would be willing to walk alongside you. Again, I'm really thankful for the men that God has placed in my life to help steer the ship, if you will. This one's for Lee. You know, again, he's going to be a father in a month. I've only been one for 2 years. What was your reaction when you found out that you were going to be a father?
You know, I actually had to ask my wife this before when we were talking about this earlier. I was like, I don't remember a lot of that point in time as far as anything specific. You know, so my only memory is joy. Just that's awesome. That's exciting. And she said, what the parts that she remembers are that we had just visited my sister and her young daughter, my niece, and I had loved that so much. That week was just pure joy. And we had gotten home, and apparently I was like, let's do this thing. Let's have some kids. And it didn't take very long, and we were pregnant and having kids. And so it was very immediate fulfillment of joy for me that this was just right and good. And when I found out I was going to be a father, it was just like, yes, this is excellent. But the other half of my personality is an engineer, and so it became planning. It almost immediately transitioned into planning. Is this the house we really want to have when we have kids? Are there things around our house like dogs or sheds or tools or whatever it might be that don't belong with kids? And it kind of launched me into this lifelong project of being a father. Inside, a year and a half, we had moved to a kind of a better house for kids, and we had kind of set up the house for how we wanted to live as a family, and lots of things fell out of that planning cycle, but we're still kind of in the midst of that, right? I still have 2 kids at home, and so those plans continue to evolve every day.
That's really cool. I love the intentionality also by what you just said. I think that's something that can go by the wayside. You're so just dealing with as life is coming that sometimes it can be hard to be intentional. And so I appreciate I know you're an engineer, so you kind of get it on us, but at the same time, I appreciate the intentionality. I think of Michael Warren as a guy who has, 1 million kids, and he only has 4, but it just seems like 1 million. But his intentionality.
It's all the neighborhood kids surrounding his house.
See, exactly. Exactly.
No, I got it.
It's not just his own fan, but one thing that in my almost 4 years here, I have been so blown away by is his intentionality with his family, and not just collectively, but even individually too. And so he doesn't know this, but people are watching him. Not in a creepy way, but just in hey, I have a lot to learn. And, so I think that's pretty neat to see that in his life, hear that from your experience. Let me reach out to some of the comments we're getting. Rachel Henderson said that's how she grew up. The family made one meal. There's a face palm there. She said, if you didn't eat it, you didn't eat.
I appreciate that perspective,
Yeah.
100%.
And Tabitha, I'm well aware that dad joke was incredibly cheesy. I don't like him, but it felt right. So this is really good stuff. Let me ask you something that's probably a little bit deeper, and this is something that I know I could learn a lot from, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of other dads or father figures too. But how do you intentionally, or how are you intentional, and I use that word very specifically, intentional, about leading your family?
When my kids were young, and I know that's the stage you're in, that's the stage Lee is going to be in here, is, it's a lot of Bible study and a lot of church and a lot of Sunday school and things like that, where you're introducing the truth of the Bible to them and introducing those stories to them. And it's listening to Odyssey. For those that don't listen to Odyssey, listen to Odyssey. Listen to Odyssey more times than you want to, because you will, the truths that are discussed there just in day-to-day conversations are so important for kids. I'm in the stage now where the intentionality looks like conversations. And it's one of the parts that I love so much about kids when they turn into teenagers, when they crest over that junior high and starting to get into high school. The coaching that occurs with them and that intentionality looks like just straight conversations about what's happening in their lives, what's happening in the city, what's happening in the nation, what's happening in the world. And you can, with intentional thought, you can weave the gospel and weave the truths of the Bible through every conversation that you're having. Whether it's joy or conflict or distress or concern or whatever it is that's going on in their lives, you can just weave the gospel directly into that and point them back to the Bible every time, point them back to the Spirit in their lives, point them back to the fact that God is with them right now in this moment, in this, whether it's joy or terrible, and having that conversation, that open, honest conversation with them, and not giving them a pat Bible answer, not giving them a verse that they should go look up, but giving them the truth of almost what you're preaching to yourself daily, being able to give that away to them, is that intentional aspect, I think, with teenagers.
That's good stuff. One thing that Bethany and I try to do with our boys, and I know they're young, so they probably don't have any idea what's happening. Well, Jack is 6 months old as well, so he's not going to probably know much. But we definitely try to pray with them every single night, and there's a specifical. There you go. That's a good Father's Day word for you. One of the things that we're intentional about is also singing a specific song to them at night when we put them to sleep. Well, last night, or one thing that we pray for Graham in particular, he's 2, a little over 2, is that we really want him to be one day a warrior for the gospel.
Love it.
And there's a lot of ways you can pray through that. But last night, it was about 10 o'clock at night. My son Jack was refusing to sleep. Those are fun times. And usually at this time of night, he only wants mom, right? Because Dad's not going to help out a whole lot.
Dad does nothing.
And so I remember I'm bouncing him just in my lap last night, and just looking at him. And I start just praying out loud right there.
Love it. And
I'm praying things like, God, may he be an influencer. God, may he be somebody that is winsome, somebody that, despite the situation, can weave in and out of conversation and talk to anybody about the things that ultimately matter. And I just remember at times when I was praying, he would shriek and smile as certain words are landing. And I'm like, God, I hope that your Spirit just, encouraging me even now, at 6 months old. And I appreciate what you said, though, about being so intentional. And I love the idea of, as the kids get older too, having conversation, but not just say, hey, go look up these 8 things, but let's have a conversation about what you're experiencing or what you're watching, but also what does God say about that? And let's dive into the Word together and have that conversation. So let me ask you this. Go ahead.
I'll just give you one other on young kids. As you were speaking, I was thinking that, my wife and I have had K-Love on the radio for every year since the kids have been growing up. And you're just talking about, their what they listen to and what they hear and how they respond. And, one of the greatest joys for my wife and I when our daughter was 6, 7, is when we would hear her playing quietly in her room singing K-Love and the radio wasn't on. And it was just, it's figuring out interesting ways, whether praying or listening or acting it out to instill that the important truths of the Scripture in their hearts, and in such a way that they don't even realize they're there. They just do it when they're not doing anything else. And that's pretty neat. That's really neat. Yeah. That's
really cool. I want to shift gears.
Sure.
Just a little bit. So one of the things that you have been doing, you've been coming to Change Point for how many years now?
19 years.
Okay, so for almost 2 decades he's been attending Change Point, but you've also been investing in the next generation. You've been investing in teenagers. And look, I'm a former youth pastor, so young people have a very near and dear and special place in my heart. I appreciate what families walk through from the outside looking in with teenagers. And the first, 2/3 of ministry experience for me was with teenagers. And so I respect so much your willingness to not just volunteer, but to walk with these young men and women. And so let me ask you this. What drives your passion for investing in teenagers?
In my own story, my personal story is what drives my desire to invest in teenagers is, my teenage years from sophomore in high school through the end of college were pretty rough, and they involved me kind of walking away from the church, walking away from the gospel, and trying to do it my own way. And those were some very, very hard years. And when I came back to the gospel, when I came back to Christ, when he finally got a hold of me, the mechanism he used was a friend having an honest conversation with me right where I was at, sitting in a bar. And that ability to have an honest conversation about who God is in the midst of the chaos of this world is crucial to me. And what God impressed upon me at that time was that had I been able to have that conversation earlier, some of the previous heartache that I had gone through may not have been necessary, right? And as soon as it was available to me, as soon as it became apparent through one of the mentors that I had here at Change Point, he said, you know what, I think your story has a real resonance with students. You should come hang out and tell them that story. And I did, and I've never looked back because it is such a good place to be. I can't tell you the number of wonderful conversations I've had with students over the last 18 years of them in a place where they're hurting, where they're looking at walking away from the church, they're looking at walking away from their faith, they're looking at making reaffirming decisions that are pushing them further from the church, where I can have an honest, humorous conversation with them, not condemning them, just being a friend and being a mentor and being able to give a reason for the hope that's in my life, right? And that's the key, right? Is being able to say, here's what God showed me, let me give it to you. And just that simple, easy, straightforward conversation has happened so many times in the last 18 years that it's impossible to give up. It is one of those things that brings me joy, that, when you feel the Lord just pulsing through your veins in this conversation and speaking through your lips, you're just, I can't describe anything better.
Wow. Well, and again, thank you for your long commitment to teenagers. You probably know this, but you may never know the impact that you're having on these lives. I remember about 5 years ago, I got a letter in the mail, a handwritten 3-page letter from a former student. How she even got my new address, because I was in a different church, how she knew where I was at, I don't know. Hadn't talked to this person in over 10 years. And just God knew what I needed to hear in that moment. Like, God is such a specific God. We often just don't think God cares about the little things, but he so does. And I just remember getting this letter, and I had no idea how God had used our volunteers in that season when I was at that church, but also my own life to really help her experience God in a new way. And what an honor, right? What an honor.
One of the things I just enjoy about student ministry so much is exactly what you just said, is that while I can point to those important conversations that I've had that I know about, the thing that continues to be impressed upon me by those students that come back and talk to me and tell me where they're at now is that the number of stupid moments that resonated perfectly in their life, and it's what they needed. And they needed to see that God was real in someone's life. And that often doesn't represent itself as the Bible verse on the tip of your lips. It often just represents itself as your kindness or your spirit leaking out in the weirdest of moments.
Sure.
And those moments are just fantastic, and if you pay attention, they're happening all the time, and they're meaningless to most of us most of the time. But God uses those in such a unique and weird way with students, to where that is the one thing that stuck, is how I played dodgeball. That's what stuck out to someone. How I tackled that student in the snow that time at winter camp. That's what stuck out to someone. And it's so strange. And it has very little to do with me. It just has to do with the Lord working through you in this context, right?
Yeah. And the truth is, I don't remember much. My youth pastor was a guy named Hugh Kirby, has influenced hundreds or thousands of young people in the 80s and 90s. And I don't remember one sermon, Hugh, at all. I don't. Take the hit. But you know what I do remember, Hugh Kirby? I remember the time.
Yeah.
I remember the time you said, come work out. And he was humongous, and you can tell that I love weights. But but I remember also the times when I would help him lay pine straw, or we'd go somewhere else and help a family, like we'd lay sod in their yard, or fill in the blank, right? I remember the conversations on the way to a mission trip, or on our way to youth camp. I remember the time.
Yeah.
That's what I remember the most. And that's such a beautiful thing. And that's huge for us as fathers. We need to be spending time with our families and our kids. And if we're a mentor, we need to spend time with people that are trying to figure out life. It's not just about what we say. I learned this probably almost every day in ministry. It's not usually what I say, it's being present.
Yeah.
And I have some growth I need to do in that area, and I'll own that. But thank you for that, for what you do, not just as a dad and as a husband, but also as a volunteer for the next generation. Man, that's good stuff. So I want to kind of bring it to a close. And there's a couple things that you listed on some of your answers as we were dialoguing this week. But what kind of fatherly advice would you give us inexperienced or young dads?
Yeah, my wife and I talk about this a lot, about if we're going to distill kind of our parenting, or, hopefully soon, in the next 10 years, grandparenting, down to kind of some basic things and what can we share. And one of the true things that has been through our entire marriage and through our entire parenthood is that it can always get worse. That is a fact. If anyone ever tells you that this is as bad as it can get, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. And the fact that it can always get worse can always be used as a blessing or as a threat. It's a great thing, because if your kids believe that this is as bad as it can get, promise you can always make it worse. It can always get worse. Right? There's always things that can happen. But if you're looking at your situation and you're feeling downcast, that, man, this is just terrible, just think to yourself, no. I promise you, it can get worse. And so be thankful for the little things in that moment, that you are able-bodied, that you have breath in your lungs, that there's sun shining somewhere, right? That if you keep that mindset that you're somewhere in the middle, you're not at the high, you're not at the low, and it helps keep a modicum of reality in how you view the world. And so you can always be assured that it can always get worse. You're in the camper and it's raining and you've run out of diapers, and it is a terrible situation. This is a situation we've been in. It can always get worse. You can blow a tire on the camper. You can have the engine go out. It can always get worse. You can be picked up for loitering on the side of the road. It can always get worse. And so just be thankful in the moment for what it is. And that way, when those little things come, like it stopped raining, you can enjoy those little things and love every bit of it. So.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about what you said when I asked you this question, you said you don't, and again, I've struggled with this as a new dad, because I was older too when I got married. When I got married, I was 33, and then 37 when Graham was born. And so for me, part of my struggle has been, it's been harder at times to adjust to a child in my house at an older age, right? I've got certain habits and I've got certain ideas about time and structure and all those kinds of things. But one thing, and I've struggled with this attitude, but one of the things that you told me was, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But I want you to finish that statement, though.
You get to do everything. This
Boom.
is You asked if I had any dad jokes or things I say all the time, and this is one of those things. My kids are tired of me saying this, and the students that I have small group with at student ministry are tired of me saying this, but it's such a true thing, and that perspective change moves everything, is that you don't have to do anything. There's nothing in life you have to do. If you know enough people and you look around and get to meet people of different life circumstances and people that are rich or people that are poor, you realize there is literally nothing that we have to do. Everybody's life is different in some way, right? The differentiator is that we get to do whatever we want, right? That we get to go to school. We get to raise kids. We get to spend time with our kids doing really dumb things like watching cartoons and playing princess dress up, right? Whatever it happens to be, we get to do that. We don't have to do that. We never have to do anything. We don't have to worship God. We get to worship God. We don't have to go out into this beautiful wilderness of Alaska and go fishing and go hiking and do those things. We get to do that. And when you get to do those things, it's an opportunity, it's a privilege, and it changes your mindset entirely. I back this off all the way even to things like school and personal hygiene. You don't have to do any of that.
Yes. Can we make that a have to?
No, you can't. You get to do those things, so that it's important because you get to. And as soon as you change that perspective from you have to you get to, suddenly it becomes, you gain power over it, you gain control over it, and you get to choose what it is that you invest your time and energy into.
That's good stuff. Yeah, attitude matters. There's no doubt about that. So, Change Point family, I want to encourage you today. If you are struggling in the area of investing in your kids, I want to challenge you to invest in your kids. Spend the time. And I love this approach that David even shared with us, that we don't have to do it. We get to do it. And that changes everything. And not only that, but be intentional when it comes to the conversations about Jesus. Be intentional about prayer. Be intentional about the way that we model even interacting with our spouses. Be intentional about investing in other people. And you know what? If you're somebody that kind of is feeling like a nudge inside of you to be investing in the life of somebody else, follow it. Run after it. Pray and ask the Lord to continue to give you the strength and the energy and the vision, but run after it. Invest, pour into somebody else, because you have no idea the impact that can and will make in the life of somebody else. And if you're a dad, spend the time. Invest in your kids. David, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for the things that you downloaded, even if I'm the only one that got anything today, I just want you to know the impact that you've made from your experience and your faith on my own dadness. And so I just want to say thank you for that. So
happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, Change Point family, we hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll be back tonight about 5:45 for the pre-service comments for the 6 o'clock service that'll be online. And we hope you enjoy this beautiful day. And happy Father's Day.